Hello, welcome to Study Hub Pro. Today, we're going to dive into the world of lipids and fatty acids. Now, these are the building blocks of things like fats and oils, and even our own cells, so you can probably guess they're pretty fundamental to biology. Let's get right into it. So, you've probably seen this a million times in your own kitchen, right? You try to mix oil and water for a salad dressing, and they just refuse to combine. Well, that simple little observation is actually the key to understanding one of the most important principles in all of biology. So, let's figure out why that happens. The answer to that question lies deep in the chemistry of these molecules we call lipids. It's all about how they interact, or maybe more accurately, how they don't interact with water. Okay, so what in the world is a lipid? Well, it's less about having one single rigid chemical structure and more about sharing a specific personality trait. They absolutely do not dissolve in water. You can think of them as being water-faring or hydrophobic. They are, however, totally fine dissolving in other oily nonpolar stuff. This brings us to two really essential terms you've got to know. On one side, you have hydrophilic, which literally means water-loving. These molecules have a charge, kind of like a tiny magnet that water molecules can stick to. And on the other side, you have hydrophobic, or water-fearing. These guys are neutral, they're nonpolar, so water has nothing to grab onto, and they just get pushed away. But here is where things get really interesting. What if a molecule has a split personality? That's exactly what amphipathic means. It's got one part that loves water, a hydrophilic head, and another part that fears it, a hydrophobic tail. And this dual nature isn't just a cool fact. It's the entire reason our cells can exist. It's what allows them to form the barrier that separates what's inside a cell from the great outdoors. All right, so we know how they behave around water. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty and see how they're actually built. What's the basic recipe for a lipid? Well, the recipe starts with two main ingredients. You take a fatty acid, and we'll look way closer at those in a minute, and you combine it with some kind of alcohol. And when those two get together, you form your lipid, which is chemically called an ester, and a little molecule of water gets released. This whole reaction has a name, and it's a big one you should remember: esterification. It's totally fundamental to lipid chemistry. So the link that holds that fatty acid and alcohol together is called an ester bond. Think of it like the chemical glue of a simple lipid. It's strong enough to hold on to energy for storage, but it can also be broken when we need that energy. And how do we break it? By adding water back in, a process we call hydrolysis. Okay, now that we have the basic recipe down, let's take a little tour and meet the whole diverse family of lipids. You'll see they come in a ton of different shapes and sizes, and each one has a really unique job to do. We can sort this big family into three main categories, which gives us a great roadmap. We've got simple lipids, complex lipids, and derived lipids. So what's the difference? It's actually pretty simple. Simple lipids, like your basic fats and waxes, are mostly just about energy storage. But complex lipids, well, they have extra groups bolted on, like a phosphate group in phospholipids. And these little add-ons give them brand new superpowers, like the ability to form those all-important cell membranes we were just talking about. And finally, we have the derived lipids. You can think of these as highly specialized molecules that are built from other lipids. They're not just for storage, they have very specific jobs. And the most famous members of this group? You guessed it, steroids. And the most important steroid in all of animal biology has got to be cholesterol. You can see its classic four-ring structure right here. It's so vital, in fact, that our own bodies make it. But we also get it from the food we eat, in things like eggs and dairy products. Now, I know cholesterol gets a really bad rap sometimes, but it is absolutely essential for our survival. It plays a huge role in keeping our cell membranes stable, making sure they're not too stiff or too floppy. On top of that, it's the starting block our body uses to build a whole range of critical steroid hormones. Okay, let's zoom back in on that key building block we mentioned earlier, the fatty acid. Because it turns out the actual structure of that fatty acid tail makes a world of difference. So what is a fatty acid? I know, that technical term is a mouthful, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just a long chain of carbon and hydrogen atoms with a special acid group at one end. That's it. A really simple but incredibly powerful little structure. Now, here is the key difference, and you'll want to lock this in. Saturated fatty acids, which you see on the left, are perfectly straight. That's because they only have single bonds between their carbon atoms. But if you look to the right at the unsaturated fatty acids, you can see they have at least one double bond. And that double bond creates a kink or a bend in the chain. And that bend is everything. And here's why that kink matters so much in the real world. The straight chains of saturated fats, like what you find in butter, can pack together really, really tightly. That's why they're solid at room temperature. But the kinks in unsaturated fats, like in olive oil, act like little elbows, pushing the other molecules away. That prevents them from packing tightly, and that's why they stay liquid. It's a perfect example of how structure determines function. So we've covered the chemistry, we've met the different types. Now let's bring it all home by connecting these ideas back to why lipids are just so essential for life. Believe me, they do a lot more than just store energy. Here's the big picture takeaway. Lipids are our body's most high-density form of energy storage, bar none. They are the main structural building blocks of all our cell membranes. They provide insulation to keep us warm, and they cushion our organs. And they act as critical signaling molecules, like hormones, that help coordinate everything our body does. But there's a small catch. Some of these fatty acids are so important, we call them essential. Now, in biology, essential is basically code for your body can't make this, so you had better get it from your diet. So, why can't our bodies make them? This is a fantastic little detail, especially if you're studying for an exam. It turns out our bodies just don't have the right tools. We lack the specific enzymes called delta-12 and delta-15 desaturase that are needed to create double bonds past the 9th carbon atom on that fatty acid chain. Our molecular machinery just can't reach that far down the molecule. So, I'll leave you with a little puzzle to think about. We've established pretty clearly that lipids are water-fearing, but our bloodstream is mostly water. So how does our body solve this massive problem of transporting these oily, hydrophobic molecules through our watery circulatory system? It's a really fascinating challenge and something to think about for next time. See you in the next video.